I've just come back from Afghanistan, where the shock takeover by the Taliban 6 months ago has left women and girls in a desperate plight. Women are not allowed to go to work except in schools and hospitals, and it's the only place on earth where girls cannot go to high school. Yet, it is the women and girls who are showing the defiance, setting up secret schools and coming out on the streets to protest in small groups, even as the Taliban beat them back and attack them with pepper spray. In almost 35 years as a foreign correspondent, mostly covering conflict, that has been a familiar picture. To me, the real heroes in war are not those on the front lines, but those holding life together, feeding, educating, protecting their children, sheltering the elderly as all hell breaks loose around them. Those are almost always the women, and you won't find any statues to them. Indeed, stories of war are told, even now, mostly through the men. Men writing about men. Women's voices far too often left out. But there's also, sadly, another side of what happens to women in war, and that is the use of rape and sexual violence inflicted by soldiers and militias. Over the last few years, I have come across more and more stories of such brutality that I have found hard to tell and even harder to listen to. I should probably say now that this is a talk you might not want to listen to. Indeed, one of my former foreign editors, a man, told me no one wants to hear these stories. But if you can listen and share the stories, you will help tell a hidden half of history. Most of us women know that heart-stopping feeling of walking down a dark lane at night and hearing steps quickening behind us. Being at an office party where a male boss pushes up against us, or alone in a train carriage at night when a stranger walks in. Imagine then being in the Galaxy Cinema in the Iraqi city of Mosul, where hundreds of Yazidi girls had been taken into a kind of slave market after being captured by fighters from Islamic State or ISIS. Sorted into the ugly and the beautiful, imagine the complete terror they must have felt as those fighters came through, touched their hair, grabbed their breasts, and decided which one they wanted to take. I first heard about this when I was reporting on the refugee crisis in Europe in the summer of 2015 on the tiny Greek island of Leros. I had gone to interview a group of Yazidi refugees in the ruins of a mental asylum, and it was clear something absolutely terrible had happened to them. All the light had gone out of their eyes, and they seemed disconnected from what was going on, not even noticing when their children almost fell through broken floorboards. Then one of them gave me a phone with a video on it to watch. I didn't understand at first. It was like a cage with flames coming out of it and men jeering and cheering. "They're burning virgins alive," she said to me. "That's my sister." I didn't know what to say. They then told me that they had all been abducted from their villages by ISIS fighters, sold into sex slavery, sometimes over and over again, sometimes for as little as the price of a cigarette packet. Later, in northern Iraq, I went to a camp and met a girl called Naima. She was wearing a check shirt, jeans, her hair drawn back in a ponytail. And she told me that she had been sold 12 times. "I felt like a goat," she said. She tried to kill herself, but survived. "Even death didn't want me," she shrugged. I thought that was the worst I could hear. But then I met a 16-year-old girl with a gold peacock pendant, the symbol of the Yazidis, and she told me that she had been captured by a fat Iraqi judge who raped her night after night, but that the worst night of her life was when he brought back a 10-year-old girl and raped her in the room next door as she cried for her mother. Around the same time, in 2014, you might remember a group of girls, schoolgirls, were abducted from their school dormitory in the middle of the night in a small town called Chibok in northern Nigeria. It made headlines all over the world for a few weeks. But when I went to investigate and travel through the region, I found that was just the tip of the iceberg. Tens of thousands of girls and women, sometimes as young as 12, had been taken by Boko Haram fighters. I met some of them in a camp. They told me of how they'd been taken by the fighters, forced to be their bushwives, and then, when they'd been rescued by Nigerian soldiers, they had been raped again. Now they were in camps, ostracized because their own families and communities wouldn't take them back. The only way they could survive was to sleep with the camp officials. That's one of the most terrible things about this issue. As we all know, rape is the one crime where the victim is often made to feel shame, or as if they did something wrong. In 2017, I was in Bangladesh when the Rohingya people fled across the border from Burma or Myanmar. Around 700,000 people crossing the Naf River in 3 months, mostly women and children. Woman after woman told me how Buddhist militias and Burmese soldiers had come into their villages, set fire to their huts, dragged them out, tied them to banana trees, and gang raped them, often in front of their children. I couldn't believe that this was happening on such a scale and no one was doing anything. These women were bravely coming forward and telling their stories, but not a single person was being prosecuted, just as nobody had for what had happened to these Yazidis or to the girls taken by Boko Haram. It made me sad, but it also made me really, really angry. And I decided to research. Rape in war, as people kept telling me, is nothing new. The first written Western history by Herodotus starts with the abduction of women by Phoenicians, then by Greeks, and then by Trojans who snatched Helen of Troy. Homer's Iliad starts with a discussion between Achilles and Agamemnon over who should get an abducted woman. From those ancient Greeks and Romans and Persians to the women taken by the Imperial Japanese Army in the Second World War, known as comfort women, and the German women raped by Soviet soldiers during the liberation of Berlin. Women have always been seen as spoils of war. In fact, it's hard to think of a war where rape hasn't happened. In recent years, however, rape has been used as a weapon of war. Ethnic groups and religious groups using rape to try and wipe out rival ethnicities, non-believers, to take areas, to humiliate people, drive them out, and capture territory which contains minerals that are lucrative and things we often use in our mobile phones and laptops. Probably for most of us, the first time we heard about rape as a weapon of war was not in some far-off place, but just a couple of hours' flight from London in Bosnia in the mid-1990s. Brave women there talked about being taken to rape camps, forced to watch their daughters raped in front of them, or giving birth to babies who were reminders of the worst night of their lives. Around the same time, in Rwanda, a similar thing was happening during the genocide in 1994. In fact, it was Rwanda where the first ever conviction for rape as a war crime was secured in 1998. The 5 women who risked their lives to testify in that case thought that they were changing things so such ordeals would not happen to other women. Sadly, there have been few prosecutions since then. Instead, we have seen an epidemic of war rape. Tens of thousands of women around the world seeing their bodies used as a battlefield. As we speak here today, women in the Tigray region of Ethiopia are being raped. Women in detention centers in Belarus, protesters who have been arrested, are being sexually violated, as are migrants in Libyan detention centers, and also Uyghur people in the internment camps in Xinjiang. As we all know, we are now facing a new war in Europe, and God knows only what will happen to the women in that war. To try and understand more about this, I went and talked to women survivors around the world on 5 continents, 12 different countries, from Argentina to South Sudan. But I really could have spent the rest of my life doing this. There is so much evil that sometimes I felt that I had to stop, take a breath, look at a tree, and remember that there is calm and beauty in this world. Last year, the United Nations Special Representative for Sexual Violence in Conflict issued a report which listed 19 countries where this is happening, and also listed 12 national armies and soldiers as perpetrators, as well as 44 militias and non-state actors. This is not a comprehensive list, noted the report, but just one where credible evidence is available. Why is it happening so much? It's the cheapest weapon known to man. As one militia said to me, it's cheaper than the price of a Kalashnikov bullet. It's also extremely effective if you want to terrorize the people and drive them out of a village. Raping the women and girls works. Above all, there is complete, or almost complete, impunity. Over more than 20 years of its existence, the International Criminal Court has only convicted one person successfully for rape in war. Some people are trying to change this. On my travels, I met a really inspiring group of women known as the Lolas in the Philippines, really dignified grandmothers and great-grandmothers who were taken when they were young girls during the Second World War by the Japanese army and kept as comfort women. These women have spent 70 years trying to get justice. They don't even have acknowledgement of what happened to them in their history books. And recently, when they raised money to erect a statue on Manila Bay in honor of the women, it was taken down within a few months. Most of us know that rape is the hardest crime to convict. Even here in the UK, last year, less than 2% of reported cases actually led to a charge. Imagine then, in a country where women have no access to lawyers or media or resources, and where the perpetrators are the people running the country, controlling the area, or having the guns. Rape in war has always happened, but we are in 2022. The situation needs to change. But it won't until people start taking the issue seriously, prosecuting it, not regarding it as some kind of side issue, actually prosecuting in the way that wasn't done at the end of the Second World War in the tribunals at Tokyo and Nuremberg. A couple of years ago, I went to the cases in northern Iraq, in the city of Nineveh, of ISIS fighters, and I spoke to the Chief Justice. I asked him, have any of these people here on trial abducted Yazidi women? Of course, he said. Why aren't any of them being charged for that? I said. He laughed. Why would we charge them for that? He said. They tortured and killed people. I thought about all the women survivors I'd met who told me they would rather have died than survived what they went through. I thought about Rwanda too, where the first successful case was prosecuted. And in that case, the charges did not include rape initially, but one of the women testifying talked about being raped, and a male judge literally said, "We are not interested in this, moving on." Fortunately, there was also a female judge, Navi Pillay from South Africa, and she said, "This woman has come all this way to testify. The least we can do is hear her story." When they heard about the rapes, they changed the whole case and brought those charges. There have been some successes in recent years in domestic courts, but accountability remains the exception, not the rule. It cannot be a coincidence that in those few cases that have been successful, there have almost always been women judges and female prosecutors. We clearly need more women judges and prosecutors. As Ruth Bader Ginsburg so memorably said, women belong in all the places where decisions are being made. We also need to put this issue on the international agenda. I have to ask, if it were men who were being raped, sexually assaulted on such a scale by women and left traumatized and mutilated, do we think the world would just be standing by? People often ask me, what is the hardest thing about your job as a war correspondent? I tell them it's not the danger or the discomfort or waiting for dodgy planes in airports that never come. It is the feeling of powerlessness when you hear people confide in you such terrible stories and nothing changes. That 16-year-old girl I told you about with the gold peacock necklace, who told me about the 10-year-old in the next room being raped all night and crying for her mother. That story was so hard for her to tell, and I asked her, "Do you want to stop?" "No," she said fiercely. "I cannot escape my story. But if I tell it, nobody will have the excuse that they didn't know." Surely, the least we can do is listen to those brave women and girls and share those stories and make sure that the history of women in war is no longer a history of silence and that war rape is no longer the world's most neglected war crime. Thank you.